Today you guys are going to learn how to solve compound inequalities. As we talked about yesterday, compound inequalities are either and or situations. So a compound inequality is two separate inequalities joined by and or. So let's first start talking about the and situation. So if you look down on this graph, if I have x is greater than -2, I would shade this way. If I had x is less than 1, I would shade to the left. But if I was talking about and, so -2 is less than x is less than 1, I would now shade in between. So here we have an and sandwich between -2 and 1. Now if I was talking about an or situation, I could have the inequality x is greater than 0. I could also have the inequality x is less than -1. And if I were to combine those graphs, I would have x is greater or equal to 0 or x is less than -1. As we talked about in class, this is like the oars of a boat when you shade. They go in opposite directions. And here we have our and sandwich, meaning our shading is sandwiched between two numbers. So when we solve these compound inequalities, we always need to remember to switch the inequality sign when we multiply or divide by a negative number. Now we're going to do two examples. So for this first one, I would recognize this as an and sandwich because my inequality, x plus 1, is sandwiched between -5 and 4. Now we're going to solve it just like we would an equation, except we have operations on both sides. So to isolate the x variable, which is my goal, I'm going to subtract 1 from each side of the inequality. And I'd be left with -6 is less than x is less than 3. Okay, now x is sandwiched between -6 and 3. So if I were to graph this, I draw my number line, draw my left side, right side. I would have an open circle because it's less than, open circle because it's less than, and then I would shade in between. And this graph would represent the solution to that equation. Now if I look at B, okay, I would recognize this as an or situation because I have the word or connecting my two equations. So all we're going to do is isolate x. We're going to treat each equation individually. So here I would add 4, so -x greater than or equal to 5. Now remember I need to isolate x, so I'm going to divide by -1. And don't forget when we divide by a negative number, we switch the sign. I'm going to drop down the word or. And then I'm going to divide here. So again, I'm switching the sign because I divided by a -3. So x greater than or equal to 9. And then I would now graph my solution. So here's my bar. X is less than or equal to -5. X is greater than or equal to 9. Here I would have a closed circle because it's less than or equal to. Here I would also have a closed circle because it's greater than or equal to 9. And then I would shade in the opposite directions. Because remember, or situations, if you do the math correctly, should go in opposite directions. They're like the oars of a boat. So this is what my answer would look like. Okay? Now if I were to go through the remaining ones of these, and I want you to do this after, I would identify letter C as an and situation because it's sandwiched between -8 and 12. Letter D would be an or situation because I have the word or combining it. Letter E is just a compound inequality, so just solve it normally. As with letter F.